Welcome everybody. Today we're speaking about what I believe is one of the deepest approaches to an overall holistic health in our lives, based on traditional 5-element systems. So there are two systems that I'm familiar with. One is the Chinese medicine 5-element system, which is very famous. I think most of you will at least have heard about it. And the second one is the Ayurvedic 5-element system, which is also famous among Ayurveda therapists, but I think probably not quite as famous as the Chinese medicine system. I do believe personally, and I have no proof about this, but I think that the Chinese medical system is, because they're both very similar, so I believe that the Chinese medical system is really some sort of a derivative of the Ayurvedic system. Again, I am not sure, I don't want to offend anybody, and I certainly have no proof about it, but there are two reasons why I think that's the case. The first one is that the sources of 5-element, the first sources we know about of 5-element medicine are definitely from the Vedas, from the Ayurvedic system, and the first sources of the Chinese medical system are quite a bit later. But that's not even the most important reason why I think so. The thing with the Ayurvedic system is that it doesn't just deal with physical medicine, with the physical body. It also has an entire spiritual 5-element system attached to it, or as part of it, and forms an entire whole that is absolutely vast. Whereas the Chinese system pretty much focuses only on the physical aspects. Now you might say that that's not true. In Chinese medicine there is also Qigong and there is Tai Chi, right? But even those systems, even though they're more energy based and they're a little more subtle, they're ultimately still dealing with the physical body, with physical well-being, with feeling energy and perceiving energy in and throughout our bodies. So it is still, even though more subtle, but it is still dealing with the physical health aspect. Whereas in Ayurveda, in the Vedic system, there are two kinds of 5 elements. There are the gross 5 elements, and then there are the non-manifest or more energetic 5 elements, right? And the more subtle aspects of it. And the physical elements, they are created out of the subtle elements, but the whole aspect of the subtle 5 elements is just incredibly huge, and it's incredibly deeply explained in such depths that it is really difficult to even wrap your head around it. So, and that's why I think that the Chinese medical 5-element system has developed from the Ayurvedic system. Now what's interesting is that in the Ayurvedic system, the 5 elements from gross to subtle are earth, water, fire, air, and then the 5th one is space or ether, right? So ether and space is the most subtle one. It's a very, very fine energetic or soft energetic aspect or element, whereas in Chinese medicine, the other elements are the same, but the 5th element is actually wood. And wood is an incredibly gross element. I mean, it's very manifest, it's very hard, it's very dense. And so I'm thinking that because Chinese medicine took this 5-element system from Ayurveda, but only focused on the physical manifest aspect of it, that they actually exchanged the most subtle one to the grossest, or at least second gross one. And they also needed this because Chinese medicine is dealing with 10 organs. So each element has 2 organs. There's always a yin aspect and the yang aspect, right? So it's always they always exist in opposites, in pairs of opposites. For example, the liver and the gallbladder, right? And or the lung and the large intestine, kidney and bladder, and so they are dealing with 10 elements. So they needed 5 very gross or very manifest elements, and I think that's why eventually this must have changed. Again, I cannot prove this, and also I don't want to offend anybody. It doesn't mean that one system is better than the other. I think the Chinese medicine did an amazing job of developing this medicine. I mean, they have 365 acupuncture points if you take out the extra points, right? It's an incredible system. It's so sophisticated, but it just deals with a certain aspect of life, and that is health and physicality. See, Ayurveda does that also, but it includes a whole other aspect that is beyond the physicality, right? So, in any event, those 5 elements, in either system you look at it, they're lying at the core of our existence and of our well-being and of everything that happens in our life. We have to understand that everything on earth, every animal, every tree, every plant, and earth itself, the atmosphere, it is, it all has all aspects of all these 5 elements within it. So that means, for example, when you take into account the principle or doctrine of macrocosm and microcosm, that everything is contained in each other. So if we have a certain balance of the elements, like let's say a certain amount of water versus fire versus earth on the planet, then the same ratio will also manifest in us as living beings on planet Earth. I know this is a crazy, amazing concept, I think, and you better believe it. And or don't believe it if you don't want, that's also okay. But it even goes as far as when you're born in a certain area on this planet where there are, is a certain mineral composition or a certain ratio between water and earth, for example, then that composition of elements will also display inside of you. So there are slight variations depending on where on earth you grew up, where you're born, and so on, right? So if these elements are in a perfect ratio to each other, and that doesn't always mean that it's, that each element has the same aspect, right? There might be more earth or more water, right? But the ratio has to be correct. So if each element is in perfect ratio to the other elements, then that means health inside of us. And when one of these elements goes out of whack, then that creates an imbalance or dis-ease. So why is this so important? And as we explain this, we will deal more with both systems, both 5 element systems, but more with the Vedic one, okay? Because I believe it came first, and I believe for what we are talking about today, which is really a system of maintaining and gaining, of course, but also maintaining, or first of all maintaining health, perfect health, in all these 5 aspects, that is really unique. And each of those elements has one or several secrets that come into play as we are maintaining their balance, right? And we're going to talk about these secrets today. And maybe they're secrets for some and not secrets for others. But in my own life and in my own way of looking at medicine, I have come to a point where I look at these 5 secrets or aspects as the core of what it means to be healthy. And I know that in our society, in our time and day, it is not a given that we are applying these 5 systems or these 5 aspects at all. In fact, most of us don't even apply one. So we're going to talk about those today, and we're going to start with the grossest one, which is earth. So the reason why we're starting with earth, the grossest elements of all of them, is because as we're progressing, we're going to get more powerful in our approaches to the different elements, because the way it works is healing starts always from the subtle to the gross, right? So what will have more effect, to heal on the level of ether or to heal on the level of earth? It will be more effective to heal on the level of ether, because ether creates air, air creates fire, fire creates water, and water creates earth. So the lower or the more gross elements are contained in the more subtle elements, right? So if you want to have a more powerful approach, you want to get more subtle. And the more subtle you get, the more powerful your approach is going to get. That doesn't mean that the gross elements are not important, right? So for example, if we talk about the secrets of Earth, what are they, right? First thing that comes to mind are minerals. So we're not going to go into depth, but in our societies, the minerals that are, and because also of heavy metals and toxins, our Earth is full of toxins, right, these days. So there is certain minerals that we need more of, for example, selenium, right? And so they get depleted more in our body. So we're going to talk about today specific minerals that are very deficient in most of us, if not all of us, and that if we take them will help us to restore that earth element, that aspect of ourselves very, very efficiently. And we're just going to talk shortly about it. The minerals are basically magnesium. I think 90% of our society are magnesium deficient. Good amount to take is about 500 milligrams. Better to take as a powder because it dissolves easier with a lot of water, so it doesn't clump. But those are all details. I don't even want to go too deep. So the minerals are selenium. That's a very important one, right? Why selenium? Because it can absorb mercury. And magnesium, we said, and iodine is a really important one. I think it's 95% of people that are actually deficient in iodine. Most governments in the world in the 70s, they started to add iodine into salt, into table salt that we eat. The problem with this is when the salt stands around for a while, like on the kitchen counter, then the iodine will dissolve. It will just evaporate. Same if you heat it over 40 degrees, it will evaporate, right? And many people have also changed their salt consumption to, let's say, Himalayan salt or other specialty salts because they're in general better salts, but then the iodine is missing again. And if you don't live at the sea or at the ocean, and you eat a lot of seafood and fish, there's a very, very good chance that you are deficient in iodine, right? There's a trick. You can take a Lugol solution. It's called Lugol, right? And you can just spread it on your body, make like an orange-red patch, and then wait for 2 days and see how well it absorbs. If it absorbs well, then you know that you're iodine deficient, right? And then you can start taking some iodine, and you can actually take much higher amounts than are usually recommended for therapeutic reasons. It's an amazing, amazing thing, and there is not one supplement in the world that will work faster than iodine if you're deficient. Like you will go from feeling like crap to feeling amazing within like 2.5 minutes. It's really, really quite wonderful, right? So, all right, and then another one that I want to mention that we're really missing are bicarbonates, right? So there is sodium bicarbonate, there is potassium bicarbonate, there is magnesium bicarbonate, and you can really take any of them, right? Make sure when you take it between meals, because if you take it together with food, it will alkalize your stomach acid, and then you can't digest your food. But bicarbonates are so powerful and so amazing because they essentially when they go in your blood, they create a heightened CO2 level in the blood, right? And you might want to think, well, CO2, isn't that poison? Isn't that something we need to excrete from our body? Not quite, right? Most of us are breathing too shallow, and we'll get to the breathing part later when we get to the element of air, but most of us are breathing too shallow, and because of that, we have a very low amount of carbon dioxide in our blood. Now the problem is, when we have low carbon dioxide, the body doesn't get a signal to push oxygen into the cell. So the oxygen stays in the blood, carbon dioxide stays low, and we never get really powerful, we never get that powerful signal to push the carbon dioxide into the blood. So now bicarbonate can change that and help us with that, and increase the carbon dioxide in our blood to a level so that signal is given and it increases blood transfusion, blood permeability into the cell. Oxygen permeability into the cell, not the blood, oxygen. Really, really cool thing. Another I guess it's not a secret aspect, for some it might be a secret, is zeolite, right? Or bentonite clay. It's different silicates, right, that we can use. And the great thing about silicates is that they're really, really small. They're about, I think, 10 nanometers, like one particle or so, and they're hollow, and they can take up all kinds of toxins when they go through our intestines and through our digestive system. So this is a really, really powerful thing, like zeolite or bentonite clay or diatomaceous earth is another name for it, and there are different ones, right? There was an Arab a physician, I think about 1000 AC, and he identified over 100 different clays for different healing purposes, right? It's really like an amazing thing. But taking a bentonite clay in our day and time, where there are so many toxins around that we take in all the time, is really, really, really a game changer. And that is all changing the element of earth, or balancing the element of earth. And now I have another trick for you. This is an Ayurvedic trick, which is really, really cool. And it's most powerful to do with the earth where you grew up or where you were born, right? So what you do is you dig a hole, it has to be 1/2 meter deep, and then you take out the earth from anywhere, starting from 1/2 meter below ground on, and you can make poultices with this, right? You can put it over like aching joints and then let it dry, or anywhere where you need it, and you can let it dry. And this will also create, first of all, an energy transfer of that vibration. That's why we're using the earth that is lying a little bit deeper. And second of all, it will also pull out toxins. It has the same effect as these silicates. So, and that's it for the element of earth. And now let's move on to the next one, which is water, which is a really, really exciting one. So the element of water, there's one problem in our day and time. Usually, if you lived like 200 years ago, you would go to, you either have a fountain, right, where you would pump up the water, or you have a spring somewhere close to where you live, and you go get your water there, or from a little stream, or, wherever it is. But nowadays, we get our water from the tap. And water is not used to moving in a tap. Like it's not used to moving straight for long amounts of time. What that actually does, it destructures the water. There is a fairly new water science, which is, it's not really new. It has been developing over the last 20 years. But basically, scientists and researchers came to the conclusion that water is not water, right? And this also plays into the whole concept of homeopathy. We used to talk in earlier days about cluster formation, but now we have a little bit more understanding, right? We speak about structured water and non-structured water, and there is really a change where water molecules start forming, or formulating in a certain order. And tap water will totally bring those molecules out of order. And when they're out of order, for example, if you freeze them, there are different water researchers who do that. They will not really form like a crystalline form, right? They will be distorted. The crystalline form will be distorted. And researchers have found out that this water is not really permeating the cell very well, which means that we can't absorb nutrients very well on the one hand, and on the other hand, we can't get rid of toxins very well, right? Structured water is also programmable, which means that you can give the water energy, like a stream that has been flowing through the forest for several kilometers. That's a beautiful thing, because it takes in the energy of, not only is it structured water, but it also takes in the energy of the nature of the surroundings of all these things, right? So, and there's obviously other ways on how we can charge our water. That's again plays back into the field of homeopathy, and that's also why in homeopathy it's very important to shake the water a certain amount of times. There are really exact rules for the different dilutions of the homeopathic remedies. So what was the shaking about? It was about structuring the water, right? And there's different ways on how to do this. For example, by creating a vortex, right? There's water filters now that have a vortex, or by using natural water, so using groundwater, using spring waters. Those waters are usually structured. And now there are many technologies that are arising. You can look that up online, that help us to get structured water very fast. So drinking a lot of structured water, or only structured water, will absolutely and totally change your health, right? So there have different studies been done of people who drink structured water for 6 months. It is amazing, the results, right? Their skin starts to get younger. Many things change in the body. So and it's very simply because we can get rid of toxins, and we can absorb and utilize nutrients in a much better way, right? So this is the big secret. Not even speaking about that, and usually in most countries in the tap water there is fluoride and other chemicals which are totally harmful to to our pituitary gland and to other organs in the body. So the next element we're speaking about is fire. So where do we get our fire from? Where do we get heat from? Obviously it's the sun, right? The sun is the source of all life. There would be no plants. Doesn't matter how much earth and how much water you have. Without the sun, nothing could grow, nothing could live, right? Now in our societies, it is very common to sunbathe. And then I remember there has been a whole push from the industry for sunscreens that too much sunlight is dangerous, etc., etc. And then people started to use sunscreens with like sun protection factors of 60, 100, 120, even 150 I saw. And those sunscreens have other detrimental health effects because they also have chemicals that then get absorbed through the skin that are not very good. And then the main argument for not going in the sun so much and using sunscreen was skin cancer, right? But then later they found out that most skin cancers actually happen in areas where no sunlight penetrates, like maybe right there at the groin, or in areas where you usually don't have sun exposure. So in any event, now lately or recently, we have society has leaned more towards getting more sun exposure again, right? Especially because of the whole vitamin D debate that has been going on. And vitamin D is no doubt one of the most powerful nutrients that we have, and safest, by the way, right? So the sunlight has become en vogue again, right, a little bit. But one thing, and this is again a scientific secret, is again an Ayurvedic secret, and that's how we're getting now to the next part that is really important, is how can you get the most energy of the sun, right? Because, see, the body has a natural protection, and when it senses there is too much UV light, it will just close its pores, right? And no energy will go through anymore. So the secret to getting the most energy of the sun is to either do yoga or sun gazing, right, or pranayama, either half an hour before to half an hour after sunrise, or half an hour before to half an hour after sunset. This is the time where there is no UV light yet in the atmosphere, and your pores are open and they're absorbing the sunlight like nothing else, right? And this is a really ancient Vedic yogic secret that has been around for thousands of years, but it has almost been forgotten in our day and time. There is only a few people who are using it, but there is very little that is more powerful. Now let's put those three energies, right? Those three elements, the fire, the water, and the earth together, right? So on the one hand we have the minerals, on the one hand we have minerals, on the other hand we have structured water, and then we have the sunlight that gives it all life. And when we put all three of them together, what comes out of it is plant life, right? And that's where our herbal medicine comes from. And herbal medicine is so important because it sums up, or it synthesizes those three of the grossest elements, right? And in traditional medicine, we always say there's a remedy for each disease, and there are really miraculous things going on, like the doctrine of signature, for example, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the doctrine of signature, but there are certain plants basically that show us through the way they look what they're going to do for us medicinally, right? So take, for example, the walnut. If you crack a walnut, it's like the skull, and then the inside looks like the human brain. So what does it do? It has high amounts of lecithin and other things that are good for brain health and for concentration, right? Cut a tomato, look at it, you'll see it's red, and the inside is shaped like a heart. Tomato has substances inside that are great for heart health and maintaining heart health, right? So look at the pine cone, right, for example. The pine cone and the pineal gland, they look alike. That's why the pineal gland is called pineal gland, because it looks like a pine cone. So let's, for example, take the Austrian or the Swiss stone pine. It has proven qualities that it can deepen the sleep, for especially the first phase of the sleep. There has research been done that when you sleep in a bed out of stone pine wood, that you have 3,400 average 3,400 heartbeats less during the night. So that's a beautiful thing, right? Why is this happening? Because the pineal gland exchanges hormone into melanin and then melatonin, right? And melatonin helps us sleep. So it's a wonderful thing, and there are all these correlations out there. It's almost like God has shown us a way to figure out what we need to use for which condition in our life. And this is a synthesis between earth, water, and fire. So great, now let's talk about the air element. This is my favorite element because it's also one of the most important, right? It's really, really amazing. Like, you think about it, you can live without food for 30 days. You can live without water maybe for 7 days, right? But you can live without air only for 3, 4, 5 minutes maybe, and then you pass out, and then after 7 minutes you probably die. And so that shows us how important air is for our body. And we've already spoken a little bit about this, prana and apana it's called, right? It's like the air, the oxygen that we breathe in and the carbon dioxide that we breathe out. It's a perfect balance, right? And we've spoken a little bit about it in connection with the bicarbonate. But now we're going to speak about the secret on how to manage and how to make the air element healthy and strong and balanced in our body. And that is pranayama, right? It's breathing exercises. So how do we do that? There is literally one exercise that has been brought down from thousands of years ago, right? And it's called kumbhak. And if we just manage to master this one exercise, we can balance the CO2 oxygen exchange in our body perfectly, right? I'm going to show you how this works. It's a really, really beautiful thing. So you basically breathe in through one nostril and you close the other one with your finger, and then you hold your breath, and then you breathe in, then you breathe out through the other nostril, okay? Now, question is, which nostril do you breathe in and which nostril do you breathe out? So that depends, right? You'll see your body, I don't know if you know this, but your body will automatically always close one nostril, and it's always depending on the temperature, because the body tries to moderate the temperature in the body and to adjust it to whatever is the temperature outside. So when we breathe in through the left nostril, it cools the body down. And if we breathe in through the right nostril, it heats the body up, right? So if, let's say you wake up and you're sweating because it's really hot outside, you can check. You can be sure, almost sure, that your right nostril will be closed. That means when you breathe on your hand, you'll notice that you always really only breathe out or in through one nostril. So when your body is too hot, the body will close the right nostril, so to regulate the temperature in the body, so that you only breathe through the left, right? So depending on if it's winter or summer, you can choose with which direction, with which nostril you are doing the kumbhak. Right now, it's a little bit warm in here, so we'll do it through the left, and you breathe in through the left, then hold comfortably as long as you can, and breathe out to the right. And if you want to be really, really professional about it, see if you can do it that the breathing in is half as long as the breathing out, or the breathing out is double as long as the breathing in. And if you master this breathing, if you do this for a few minutes every day, your health will completely change after a while. It's a very, very beautiful and a very, very powerful system. Great, and now let's talk about the last of the elements, which is ether or space, right? And I'm not sure if the Chinese maybe changed this because they just didn't know what to do with this element, right? Because it doesn't really have anything as tangible as the other elements. It does, however, have a very, very amazing quality, right? It's the quality of expansion. Now, the Vedic teachings also teach that expansion is everywhere in the universe, right? So I know that modern science says something else. They say that sometimes we expand, and then it's like a breath, and then we contract again, and then we expand and we contract. But Vedic sciences teach that life is all expanding all the time, right? So now, what is the space element that has this quality of expansion, and what can it teach us? Let's think about this, right? So usually in our mind, we are locked up inside a certain framework. We all have that, that is built out of our education. It is built, out of what we have learned, what we've born, the language that we speak, the teachers we had, the friends we had. And we form a certain framework of paradigms of what we know to be true and what we know to be false, and then we follow this framework. Now the problem with this framework is that, it's a framework of acquiring, right? So we fill ourselves up, right? Space is more about emptying, right? Space is empty, there is nothing in there. Space is more about emptying ourselves, right? So, which means that when we let go of certain frameworks inside of us, that we are strengthening the space element, because we're releasing the contracted state, we're releasing the framework, and we're acquiring a wider framework. Now, all of us are bound and attached to material things in our life, right? Be it making money, be it having a relationship, having kids, having a car, whatever it is, right? That's why a lot of spiritual teachings and spiritual systems in the West have focused on the law of attraction. How can I manifest this? How can I manifest this? How can I manifest this? Now, why are we doing this, or why is this so prevalent in our life? It's because we have not figured out yet the immortality, you could say, of our soul, right? The fact that we're eternal. This realization lies at the core of the element of space. Once we have that realization, fear gets less, anger gets less, jealousy gets less, right? The fear of not having enough, of protecting ourselves, or the urge of protecting ourselves is a basic thrive for almost everything in our life, right? So why do we do anything? Right? Why do we find a relationship so that, we can feel better, we can feel safer. We want to make money so that, in case something goes wrong, we have something accumulated. We need a bank account, so, who knows when I'm going to need it. Greed comes for the same reason. It's all basically of fear of not being protected. And that comes from the limited framework of us being final, of us dying someday, of everything being over someday, of things being finite, right? When in reality, the things that are finite are not really us. And the part that is us cannot be finite. It cannot die. Nothing can be done to it. It cannot be hurt. And this is the ultimate framework of a strong space element, right? So what comes with it? What comes with this, letting go of attachments and realizing that we are endlessly wide and big and large and have no beginning and no end. With it comes also the notion in our life of making no difference between one thing and another, right? The more we go up into the subtle, in the elements, the more we come into balance duality of the two extremes in life, the yin and the yang, right? So as we're doing this, as we're doing this, this is an effect on all the other elements, right? So if we can fix this part of our awareness, this part of the way we think, and this part of how we perceive the world, and we go from a place of acquiring to a place of letting go, then all the other things can heal as well. And this is part of research in the last 30, 40 years that has become really big about the influence of the psyche over the physical, of the subtle over the gross, of the way we think and perceive things over the health of our body. Now, trying to force ourselves to think a certain way, right? That's all symptomatic. This is all only a symptomatic fix. Just as our herbs for the way we perceive things, just as our pharmaceuticals. Why? Because they are lying further down in the order of elements. They are more gross. You can never fix something more subtle with something more gross. So the way we have to fix the more subtle is by literally recognizing and realizing who we truly are, right? Which is infinite, which is immortal, which is endless, which is non-destructible. So those are the 5 secrets to balancing the 5 elements. I hope you enjoyed it, and please like our page, Einheitskraft. You can also go to our website, einheitskraft.com, and see what we have there. I hope you'll enjoy it, and we'll see each other next time.